This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
This might be one of the smaller updates that Line 6 have ever done, but it's significant for me for a few reasons. Firstly, we get more cabs, so the firmware. So there was the new cab update, the last one. There was a bunch of kind of my favourite cabs that weren't necessarily on there. There are now those cabs that I was missing, but there are also some additional ones that I think you're going to enjoy potentially, particularly if you like EVM speakers. There's the new kind of open back cast, which is the type of cab that I actually use live, so very happy with that. More significantly though, there's this new amp in there, the Grammatico GSG. Now you might not have heard of this particular model, but if you look on Grammatico's website, they have it on the bench with a Robin Ford Dumble, or the Robin Ford Tan Dumble. So you can have a fair idea about what this amp might be based on. Now, prior to this, the Litigator would have been my go-to amp for this sort of tone, or the Mesa Boogie Lone Star, which kind of shares some sort of stuff. But the Litigator wasn't actually based on any specific amp. It just came from the mind of Ben Adrian, you know, on that sort of modded Fender journey, whether it's something like a Two-Rock, something like a Dumble, something like a Red Plate, something like Fuchs or whatever. This is now based on a real life amp from Grammatico, which was of course a clone of a Dumble amplifier with new old stock parts and all this stuff. It's also significant because this is, I think, the first time that within one amplifier you've got both the clean and the drive channels. I think this might be the first time this is on any modeler. Really significant because it means that you can, with one amp model, have kind of two tones, clean and dirty. I think this is the first time that this has been done on any model that I can think about. I've seen people asking this for years, where it's like, I know this amp has two channels, can we switch between them without switching amp models? You know, like normally in a Helix you'd have to have like the Lone Star clean and the Lone Star drive, and once you've done that in the HX Stomp you've used up most of your DSP. This is the first time that the Grammatico GSG, you can load just the one amp model and have either clean or dirty, or all the channel switching options. There are a ton. I wanted to go into that amp in more detail in this video, and that's what I'm going to do now. I'll do another video on the other parts of the updates, I think, but there's like a new amp, another new amp, the Line6 Helix, I think it's called, and then there's a bunch of cabs, and I think that about covers it.
Right, okay, so I've put two presets on my HX Stomp which I actually created Igor asked if I would create some presets, or if I wanted to, that are on the actual Helix now. I think that's the first time that's happened officially. So you can actually find a couple of my presets on the factory settings of the actual Line 6 Helix. It's a big day for me, of course. The best day of my life. The second best day was when my daughter was born. Just kidding. Right, anyway. So, I would recommend reading the release notes on this amplifier. Now, what you'll notice is that they don't actually mention Dumble specifically in the notes, but if you go on the Grammatico website, you can find some pictures of it, Robin Ford amp. I don't know how they got Robin's actual amp on the desk. If it is Robin's actual amp, I think it's got the blue line marks and all that sort of stuff, so I think it is. Anyway, the blurb says the Grammatico GSG100 is an amp based on the study of legendary amps made around 1980. This model aims to capture all the unique details of this amplifier circuit, many of which are quite different than popular guitar amps from the major companies. The GSG100 is a feature-rich and complicated amp. There are many amazing sounds in the amp, however the controls allow for such a wide range of adjustment that it's possible to get unpleasant sounds from it as well. To best use the amp, it really helps to know exactly what each of these features is doing to the guitar signal. Let's go through the parameters as they are found in the Helix model. Okay, so I've paired it here with the 2x12 Silver Bell and the 2x12 Match H30. Another strong recommendation would be to use the open back cast. I think it's open cast. But yeah, there's basically a new cab in there which has the EV speaker. Anyway, so in this preset at the moment, I've got 3 snapshots, but I'll just sort of run you through the settings and read through them. Basically, drive on the real amp would say volume, lets you know how much drive is going into the amp. I think starting off at 5 on all of this is a really good starting point. Bass, mid and treble, the normal controls on the amp, called a tone stack, located between the first and second gain stages in the preamp. These have different ranges than traditional guitar amp controls. Also, the whole voicing of the tone stack can be changed with the rock jazz switch. Okay, then you've got presence, which is again just basically the same as a normal amp. Channel volume is our way to change the volume without changing tone. And the master, it can be used to get more or less power amp distortion. The amp is very loud, and most players would probably run the master volume on the lower side. I think Robin Ford tends to run his around 4 or 5. If the master volume is cranked, the power amp distortion can be pushed into unpleasant territory, sort of like a Mezzo Boogie really. And most players would never crank the master in real life, as the actual output would be way too loud for most musical settings. Okay, we've got a mid switch. This changes the value of the treble capacitor in the tone stack. When it is off, the amp has more of a scoop sound. When it is on, there is a noticeable upper mid boost. Jazz rock, this changes the wiring of the tone stack circuit. It allows for totally separate tonal voices. Jazz is quieter with a lower center frequency for the mids. Rock is louder with a more traditional mid frequency center. Tone controls rarely translate well between the jazz and rock settings. If a good sound is achieved in one mode, it is not guaranteed that the same settings in the opposite mode will still sound pleasing. Here's a really key thing, the OD switch. So this basically turns on a 3rd and 4th gain stage, and this is the first time in the Helix, I believe, that we've got kind of both channels of the amp. Because it's a cascading amp in the way that it is, it's basically just adding these 2 gain stages behind it. Generally, it's best to set up the bass tone of the amp with the drive and tone controls first, and then adjust the overdrive circuit to work with the desired bass tone. OD drive, this would be called ratio on the real amp I think, controls the amount of drive or saturation in the overdrive circuit. Since the whole overdrive circuit is after the amp's regular drive and tone controls, the range of OD drive knob will change based on those earlier knob settings. OD level, this controls the output level of the overdrive circuit. There's a bright switch, 3 position, on, off and different values of bright capacitor. The higher the drive, the less difference that will make. There's an FET boost, which in real life I think people sort of have said that it's designed to work with an acoustic guitar, weirdly enough, but not something that typically I don't think folks in the real world tend to use those much. This one here, the preamp bypass, is really, or preamp boost, I can't remember what it's actually called. I think it's either preamp bypass or preamp boost, according to people that know about the real amps. But essentially what it does is it takes these knobs out of the circuit and then gives you a boost. So basically you can then get more gain. I'll just show you that actually. Less. So anyway, yeah, so starting off with drive 5, bass, mids and treble at 5. Presence I like to keep a little bit lower because I'm into those more creamy kind of tones. There's this jazz rock switch which louder in the rock. And maybe a bit brighter. A mid switch. And I'm using the overdrive here, aren't I? But there's... It's beautiful too. And I imagine that mid switch makes a real big jump there. I would use the channel volume to kind of control the level between the two, I think. So you could drop that back a bit for your cleans. Mid switch. Amps that, or sorry, drives that people like with this. Zen drive could be a really good one, given our boy Robin Ford tends to like those. I might drop that level slightly. But yeah, I think basically just experiment with it. I don't think Robin has the mid switch on. And you could use the OD level to sort of that's just beautiful. So what have I got going on there? Again, just drive bass mids, or bass mids and treble don't actually matter so much because I've got the preamp bypass on the rock, mid switch off, presence 1.8, drive on the OD just down at 3.9, and then a bit of push from the Zen drive. So that's kind of where I'm starting at with this. I've put together this here as well. It's kind of dropped it into a usual thing. We're pushing here with a compressor. And then snapshot 3 really cooking. So, I mean, just have some fun with it, I guess. I think I've generally got that. can really do a whole bunch of stuff. There's this other preset that I put together here. I'm using the 1x12 open cast, so that's using an EV speaker, but just got a bit more brightness to it, that particular preset there. Using a bit more gain, overdrive switch on, PAB on, bright switch on as well, just to get more of that stuff in there. But I think you're going to really like this amp. If you're wanting it to clean up, I would suggest having a bright switch on. I think that makes a big difference. If it's a bit bright for you, I would suggest moving this position. Just a new favourite amp in the Helix for me, really, and I did start using it in my gigging preset. I'll go through that at some other stage, but yeah, I think you're going to love it. Read through the release notes, cabs that work really nicely with it, the open cast, but also the silver bell. I really love the sound of that with it too. I'll catch you in another video soon. Cheers for now. Oh, I'll drop these into the folder as well. If you want to jump onto Gumroad, you can grab my presets there. Updating that all the time if you want to support in that way. Cheers for now.